You're listening to the National Pulse on SAfm.
Right, of course, we did say that the budget speech and what may or may not happen is central to much of what we're talking about today. But feel free to comment on any of the other issues we've spoken about, including my comment to say, give me the name of a municipality. No comment, just municipality, and say, working or broken. All things considered, how would you grade your own municipality? And that could be big city, small town, village, whatever it is. I certainly want to know. And then, of course, the issue of Ramaphosa that I mentioned in terms of how the government has responded to the goings-on regarding USA versus South Africa. But let's stay with the budget speech for now once again. Avias Ngwenya is with us, the Vice President of Economics at Norton's Inc. Avias, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, and good evening to your viewers.
Thank you. There's been lots of discussion and debate about, what happened before and what's going to happen down the line. I'm talking about tomorrow and the 2 percentage point increase or not and how we can come out of it. I mean, how do you analyze what for you would be the right approach from the Minister of Finance tomorrow?
I think it's a very difficult set of circumstances that the country finds itself in. We find ourselves in a situation where over the last 10 years, we've seen gross domestic product probably grow by about 5% in total over that period, whilst we've observed our debt or debt to GDP ratio increase from approximately 57% to 76%. So we are a country or an economy that is extremely over-indebted. If you look at our cost of debt servicing, that's grown from about 100 billion rand in 2014, and it's sitting close to 400 billion rand. That's an increase of roughly, say, 300%. So if you were to put it in simple terms, you've got a situation where our annual income's only gone up by 5%, but our credit has increased. Our reliance on credit has increased by 300%, and in very simple terms. So we need to make some cuts. I think that's the long and short of it. Is we need to look at areas where we are inefficient, and we need to see how we can improve in those areas, how we can drive efficiency at a local level and all the way through to national government.
Okay, so you're saying make cuts so that government expenditure can be curbed, which means those that definitely need the money, they can be more efficient and ensure that they can be settled and done that right. But for now, of course, if we go back to what we know, the only thing we know is the government plan was a 2 percentage point increase because they needed the money. Now, that's what we know. How can they then move quickly from that position to what you're suggesting in a matter of 3 weeks?
I think in the short term, some very, very hard decisions have to be made. So I've taken a look at what was meant to have been the budget in February, the budget speech in February, and what did that look like? So when we looked at that budget speech, the minister was going to propose a 173 billion rand increase in what he refers to as non-interest expenditure. So this is the expenditure that goes to real sort of tangible goods within the economy, whether it's infrastructure investment, education, defense, healthcare, etc. And what does that look like? So there's some items on there that I think we definitely need. So we still need the 46 billion rand odd on an infrastructure investment. I think we definitely need, I think it was about 28 or 29 billion rand going towards increasing healthcare services and in particular hiring more doctors and nurses. That's something that we definitely need. And we definitely, to a certain degree, need to spend about 19 billion rand on education, hiring more teachers so we can educate our youth and develop a more educated workforce. There are areas where there are requirements that we can't avoid. But then there are other areas where I think we have to make some tough calls. And most of these are going to be related to social services, social grants. And unfortunately, South Africa is an economy, or a country rather, that has approximately 28 million out of 60 million people who are reliant on social grants. So you're looking at about 46% of the population that's reliant on social grants. And part of that 173 billion is saying we need to increase how much we spend for these people. But unfortunately, if we're going to make cuts and we still want to grow the economy, that's potentially one of the areas where we have to reduce the increases. So when we think about how much we're going to increase social grants by, we can't afford a 23 billion rand increase in social grants. The money's not there.
Now, on that part already, there's been opposition to that. I know the minister made the point over the weekend. It's almost like an either or. If I drop that, I'm going to have to drop the social grants, especially that special grant, the SRD, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's been opposition to that. I mean, from organizations like the IEJ, with Neil Coleman heading it, from the Center for Social Justice, headed by Prof. Tuli Maronsela, and there's a whole lot of others, including the political parties, right? So my thought is that I'm not asking you to comment on it from a social aspect, but if I'm sitting in the office of the president or the minister or in treasury, I say that could cause social upheaval.
It may, and that's unfortunately it's a consequence of where we find ourselves today, based on how we've managed the economy over the last 10 to 15 years. Now, the only other option is to increase our borrowings. Now, if we increase our borrowings, I mean, we're currently sitting, I think, at 5.2 trillion rand in borrowings, and that costs us roughly 385 billion rand a year to service. If we have to increase our borrowings again to plug the gap, there will be debt covenants that will be called, and that will increase our cost of debt servicing because interest rates will go up. And I think that's the only other avenue, barring an increase in value-added taxes.
Mm-hmm. And the tightening of belts from various departments. I mean, I'd hate to use Donald Trump as an example because I really don't like what he's done. But that example where they literally cut funding globally, not just South Africa, right? And they did that overnight. I mean, can we not borrow from that example and say, hold it, these departments, we're going to effectively cut budgets immediately because we think there's a lot of wastage in those departments and it's effective immediately?
I think without knowing what the effects of those cuts will be, it's very difficult to say that it would be the appropriate thing to do. I would be very hesitant to say, let's go and start making wholesale cuts because we believe there's an issue in one department. And then down the road, you realize that actually there were beneficial aspects of that money that was being used to help South Africans. I think you need to have a measured approach. And part of that measured approach may include delaying increases in social grants. It may include delaying expenditure on early childhood development. And it may also mean you need to start putting on the back burner future projects. So if you think about national health insurance and you think about how we want to create an environment of universal healthcare coverage, we're actually not in a position to start implementing those social systems, if I can call them that.
Okay. Just the last thing, right? There has been the flip side comment, which is like, why don't you tax the rich? Just increase corporate tax by 1 percentage point or 2. Like, that's the way to do it. I mean, what's your quick thought about that?
So there are a few things around that. I mean, so South Africa, I think South African Reserve Bank has made this point before, that we are reliant on a very, very small tax base for a significant proportion of our personal income tax. And to put it in perspective, 3 million South Africans, or roughly 5% of the population, they contribute over 80% of personal income tax in South Africa. So when you look at it from that perspective, you're going to be taxing a very, very small proportion of the economy. And in economics, there's something we refer to as the Laffer curve. And it basically says, after a certain tax threshold, people will start to find ways to avoid paying taxes. And the net consequence of that is you actually end up collecting less tax. And that's a significant challenge. And when you think about it from a corporate perspective, we're already a very high tax regime. And if we want to continue to attract foreign direct investment, we want to continue to make South Africa a region or an area where foreign investors can come and develop businesses and grow, then that's definitely not the approach we should be taking.
Okay, got that, Avias Ngwenya. I guess in simple terms, don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg, if some may define it as just that. Avias Ngwenya is the Vice President for Economics at Norton's Inc. Tomorrow is Budget Day, and of course we'll cover it and the reaction thereafter.